Good morning and good afternoon to our merry Marvelites. Welcome to Marvel Movie Talk right here on the Blattcast Entertainment Network. Very excited to be here talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. As always, I am here joined by Nate Miller. Nate, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Mrs. Hampton, Katie Hampton, still, but those pants are still sassy. I think it's still El Sassy pants. That's not going to go anywhere, right? Yeah.
Yep. Can't be El Hampy Pants. Got to be El Sassy.
And fresh off his rave reviews from Little Shop of Horrors in Burbank, the one, the only, hello, Mr. Eric Connor, Count Eric Connor. Eric, thank you for being here. We appreciate that your accolades, your write-ups, your nice reviews have not gone to your head. I really appreciate that. It hasn't happened yet.
No, usually when you get a write-up in myburbank.com, that's like it's amazing I recognize any of yous.
Yeah. It's like brush fire. Somebody got stabbed at the Home Depot, and then the next one down on myburbank.com was, of course, the Little Shop of Horrors. I can't wait for whatever might be next for you. It was your first show in some decades, I believe you said, right?
It was about 25 years, yeah.
So, time to get back into it.
You got to be in shape to survive.
Yeah, exactly.
What'd you say, Nate?
Just like riding a bike.
Yeah,
I didn't do it well before. I don't know if I did it well now.
Look, I've now seen you eaten by an enormous plant, and I could not say, I can't say that about the other two of you. I've never seen that happen. I'm just gonna have to point that out there. So, in any case, we are very excited to be talking about Across the Spider-Verse, the second animated Spider-Verse film that we have just gotten, and obviously we're going to talk about it with all the spoilers, because where's the fun in talking about no spoilers when the movie's been out for almost a week now? I guess it actually came out last Thursday for people to see it. So I want to see what everybody thinks, and just as the way that the movie starts, surprisingly, with Gwen, we'll start with our own Ghost Spider. Katie, what did you think of the movie? We're going to do big picture, and then we'll get into smaller stuff.
All right, big picture. I love this thing. I completely forgot this was a part one. And luckily I had a friend that immediately as that title card showed up, I was like, okay, good, because I got a little stunned. The whole time I was like, wow, act two, really long. But I loved it. The animation, first and foremost, was one of the first movie was incredible, but the amount of time and love that they put into this in all of the different things, it just blew my mind. I was stunned. I can't wait to own this, because I can't wait to just pause and watch, look at things. I'm very excited to get into all the nitty-gritty details.
Oh yeah, and to be able to freeze frame and be like, let's spend some time figuring out all these different spider folk that are in this one single shot. Nate, same question for you. Just sort of a big picture as you saw this, and where do you think it is in terms of what your expectations were for it? Do you think it met it? The first one much better. Where are you at with this one? Comparing it to the first one, and also your excitement level ahead of time.
I loved it. I really loved the first one, so I was already bought in, so I didn't read into a lot of the promotion or watch like too many of the trailers or stuff like that. I did not know it was a part one of two going into it. But yeah, I thought it was great. My only complaint is that it is a part one, and so in some ways it feels like just a whole bunch of setup for something else. It suffers from the Infinity War problem or Endgame problem. Which one came first?
Infinity War was first.
Yeah, exactly. The Infinity War problem of like, it's cool. There's a lot of really cool stuff, and this one especially is executed. Like, the performances are great, the animation is awesome. Like, there's a constant turn of like not just like cheap gag laughs, but like really well thought out, smart, funny gags. And then also like really good character development that doesn't get totally resolved, but gets like addressed and like built up. So yeah, I mean, I like it a lot. I can't help but think what this would have been like in just like a 6-episode series or something instead, if they just gave us the whole thing at once. But man, like one of the best experiences, most fun I've had in a movie theater in a while for the last few movies that I've seen.
Yeah, no, I think I think that really sort of sums up the experience, and I think you're right from a storytelling standpoint. If it was like a 6-episode series, we would get more, but then we wouldn't have that experience. And there's a few people in the chat who are agreeing. Daniel Drew, who I look to for knowledge in all things, even he forgot that it was a part 1. He knew that the third one was coming, but I forgot it was specifically a part 1 and 2. I had the exact same reaction, as is something that is I was able to share with Eric, because he was right outside of the theater right after my wife and I saw it. They were doing you're very involved in Burbank. It was the cultural I don't know what was that booth you were at there, the Parks and Rec. I don't even know what it was.
Don't worry about the booth I was in.
Yeah, don't you worry about that booth. Just know that it took quarters. So he was, So I ran into Eric and I was like, oh, I really liked it, but boy, did I not know that this was a true cliffhanger. I knew there was another movie. I just didn't know it was like, well, you think you know where this is going? No, you don't. You're not going to find out. It's we'll get back to you in 9 months, and I don't think it takes away from this. But it's hard to look at this for me personally as a complete film, because it is a incomplete film. But there's still a lot of great stuff to enjoy. And I think there was just that moment was like, oh no, okay, well, I mean, I knew I was getting more, and I'm just gonna have the story continue. So Eric, same question that I asked both Nate and Katie. Just big picture. And did you see it with your children, or did you want to actually enjoy it in peace and silence? So you sat in a theater filled with strangers instead of your children.
After I went to the booths, I went by myself. Now we actually went. It was a big group of us, 10 of us, half kids, half adults. And whatever I am. Okay.
And we didn't get the invite, but sure, talk more about that. That sounds like a lot of fun,
you
actually.
Always see these things like in advance, and then listen, to invite you to an opening night means I've already seen it.
Well, you brought it up, and now I have to explain why I went and saw it on Sunday after like everybody.
Like regular folk.
I had to go see it with the peons and the commoners. No, I didn't. I did get invited to the press screening. We have an inn at Sony now, as you know. And he made sure I got the invite. And it was the night of my wife's 40th birthday. And it said right on top of the invite, no guests. So I'm happy to report that I'm still married 2 weeks later. And I had to wait to see it. But we went and saw it together as part of a weekend worth of plans.
And by the way, Christian they might be the cutest couple in Burbank.
Who was?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. Yeah, the two of you coming out both in your matching Spider-Man outfits.
I mean, they weren't matching.
Lovely. They were matching. No, they were matching.
Yeah. No, we didn't. It wasn't like those families that go to Disneyland and they print up the shirt.
I assure you, they were matching head to toe.
Spiderverse 2 at the Burbank IMAX 16. We had like we made our own little tour shirts. Anyway,
I did hear somebody told me they saw a family in matching outfits at their showing of Spider-Man.
Oh,
they did say they were in Burbank too.
I loved how many people dressed up for this. By the way,
yeah,
I mean,
and true.
My son tried to wear a mask, and they stopped him, and I felt bad. My 12-year-old, he was wearing, and in fact, I was going to unbox this. This was not actually from our contact, Christian, but another friend at Sony. I was going to unbox this live, but then I realized my dog already took care of that.
Oh no!
But it is this lovely pin. Which I will happily wear.
Nice.
And I'll happily wear it the next time. You'll see here, segue. I'll happily wear it next time because I want to see this again on the big screen.
Yeah.
All right.
And this is definitely a movie that needs to be seen on the big screen.
You know, Katie, remind me of like The Simpsons at its prime. So I'm talking like when you were like 0 years old.
Okay, wow, okay.
So in essence,
how old do you think Nate is? I mean, he was also
Nate
0.
is timeless.
I have the first 9 Simpsons box set DVDs. Okay, I did my homework.
And you know how many more sets you need to buy after that? 0.
Yeah, 30.
You tapped out. You tapped out at the perfect point. Season 9.
Yeah.
But so
every
you're
now
saying
and then,
this is
I'm
sort
like, I should watch some Simpsons, and then I don't.
Yeah.
well, and at its peak, like and you could borrow Nate's box sets at any time. He told me, whoever you are, wherever you are, he'll send it. You know, those first seasons, like not the first seasons, but the mid seasons early on. There were so many things that if you watched it once, you missed half. And I got this feeling when I was watching Spiderverse that there were so many, like you were saying, Katie, you can't wait to own this. Mm-hmm. There's so many deep track references in there that I know I missed. And I'm a pretty legit fan, but then I talk to y'all and I'm like, oh God, I'm a child amongst giants. And the thing is, though, it wasn't just fan service. I think that's the greatest compliment. Like, it managed to be, in some ways, all things for all people. Like, if you go in there with a deep knowledge of Spider-Man, you're going to be happy. If you go in there with no knowledge of Spider-Man at all, you'll be happy. Because this thing works on, like, every level. Emotionally, visually, the colors, the animation, the
even
music.
Just the theme. The
themes were beautiful. Yeah.
The theme of just, like, here's a kid that has been told that he doesn't belong, even in this wide universe.
Right.
Of all, and it's like, why can't I? Like that seems to be the key of this, is like, why can I not belong to all of this and all of this difference? Which I think we're just gonna get, like, it feels like the Empire Strikes Back movie before we get to the crux, and I'm very excited. Yeah.
And on that, I was going to make that same comparison, Katie, because in some ways you could say it's a cliffhanger, but it didn't feel to me like the same kind of cliffhanger as like Infinity War, where literally, you know, snaps his fingers, half them gone. He sits down and you're like, we have to wait a year. This at least felt along the lines of Empire, although when I was a little kid crying because they froze Han Solo, you know, I was like, I can't wait for Return, but I had to wait 3 years. Here it feels like sort of like what they did really with Empire, which is like reshuffle the deck. Mm-hmm. So it didn't necessarily for me feel as much like a cliffhanger, but rather the second volume. And on that end, I think this is already well on the way to becoming maybe the best trilogy ever. Like, it could, depending on how that third one is. Like, and I loves my Star Wars, my Lord of the Rings, but this, I don't know. It's incredible. It's pretty damn close.
Well, you're clearly not bringing into consideration the first 3 Fast and Furious films, but we can. Ivan Soto with an interesting comment. He says, "This may be dumb, but I still can't believe I have a Puerto Rican superhero so crazy." I don't think there's anything dumb about that. I mean, I think that it's the great thing about these characters getting a spotlight and doing Spider-Verse in the way where it's like, yes, it's Miles' story. And this was kind of important for the first one a little bit more. It's like, but we know everybody likes Peter. Well, here it's like, you want a lot of Peters. How about a couple of Gwens? You know, you want a Spider Horse. You know, there's a little bit
Spider
of
Car.
Peter Spider Car.
I have an insanely cool story about the Lego Spider-Verse.
I want to hear about that now. Then.
Okay, it was done by a 14-year-old kid.
Oh, I just heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
he was
crazy.
a fan that recreated the trailer for the Spider-Verse, and they reached out to him and they realized he was a 14-year-old kid, but they were like, can you do this sequence in the beginning of the movie? And they pretty much worked remotely except for a couple of check-ins every week. And this 14-year-old kid learned Blender and was making these movies and like recreating like epic scenes from Spider-Man. And I just love the fact that this kid is 14 and already has a huge major motion movie credit as like an animator.
You know, the clickbait version of that story is the headline: Sony uses child labor to make multi-million-dollar film. But it is very cool when fans get to do that. You know, it's every once in a while something like that comes up. Like, I think that I think it was the last Peter Capaldi season on Doctor Who. The opening was actually something that a fan had made. I think they gave them money to sort of make it look a little nicer, but it was just like, oh, we really like this, so sure, And so when the fans are literally involved, I think it's great, especially a project like Spiderverse. What were you going to say, Eric?
Well, I was just going to say, Katie, I found out about that story yesterday. I came home and I screamed at my 14-year-old for an hour. Like, dude, what have you done? You bring no money into the house. I mean, you like Legos. What's the point?
I've got an almost 8-year-old, so we're gonna have to talk today after he gets.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah,
and it's gonna be like,
you're talking about it.
It's not. Yeah, the Legos aren't for fun, okay?
Dude, you have a YouTube channel. You put it to
you want to go to college? You want to go to college or not? Anyway, but yeah. So I mean, there's just so much to it, and obviously there's so many different things that you can kind of carve open and start analyzing. So we'll go kind of in the same order, and I'll ask what some favorite characters or moments are in the movie for each of you. What did you find, Katie?
I love that Issa Rae was in all of this. She's fantastic, and I feel like we did not get enough of her. Spider-Punk with Daniel Kaluuya. I the whole time I completely forgot he was in the movie, and the whole time I was like, I know that voice. Who is that voice? And so it was like as soon as the credits started rolling, I pulled up IMDb and I was like, oh, of course. I can't wait to get more Spider-Punk. He was so great, and what a great catalyst to get Miles to sort of rebel in certain areas. I love that. I call him Schlubby Spider-Man. Peter Parker was there and also had a kid. So I feel like there's a lot in that, and remains consistent with his character through this movie, and still being that sort of schlubby mentor character that just happenstance is telling him the right things, but just doesn't know quite how to phrase things or do the right thing in the right way. Can we just talk about the fact that Haley Steinfeld is just owning the entire Marvel universe?
Right. I mean, she's Hawkeye now. Doesn't if you follow the Jeremy Renner story at all, it seems like I don't think he's going to be Hawkeye anytime soon. He's just so happy he's still alive after that accident, and I mean, she's already going to be Hawkeye, and she's Spider-Gwen. What's next for Haley Steinfeld? And at least to date, she was in the only good Transformers movie. I'm sure Rise of the Beast is going to be amazing. But
she's in the first Transformers movie.
No, she's in Bumblebee. Yeah. So it's
I haven't seen
it. Well, if you like the Transformers movies, but you think that there's too many,
no, I didn't say that.
If there's too many Transformers in it, and you want a movie where there's only one Transformer, Bumblebee is the movie for you. You're like, nah, let's just have less.
A Transformers movie with one Transformer?
It's called Bumblebee, and spoiler alert for a movie from 5 years ago. There might be some others at the end.
Accurate advertising, at least.
Yeah. What about you, Nate? What after the movie, walking out of the theater, as you start playing back the movie in your mind, what are some of the things that stood out of oh yeah, this was really great?
This movie gave me a lot of Shrek vibes, and in the way that it's a kids movie, but there is so much more there. I'm a very active watcher, to the point of where a lot of stuff is boring to me, because there's not that much going on, right? This is about as far the opposite as you can get from that, and every scene is packed not only with just great storytelling and characters and stuff, but the depth visually, between things that just stuff that little tiny ads that just fly across the screen for half a second that has a really funny joke that's a play on something in our world or something, little details and stuff like that I was just going great watching the movie. I was just like Katie said, I cannot wait to watch this again. There's so much stuff. It's so visually pleasing, the different animation styles. Spider-Punk was my favorite. I had a similar experience with Ben Reilly, with Scarlet Spider, because like I know that voice. I know it's someone funny doing
Right.
a fake like deep serious voice, but I couldn't figure out who it was, and of course it's Andy Samberg, and I was like, that makes
And
total sense.
it's Andy Samberg doing his like his shoot what
His Nicolas Cage voice,
impression.
basically.
Is that what it is?
The voice that he would do on SNL. I mean, it's not literally, but it's pretty close to
But
it.
it's basically his like Nick Cage voice.
Being a 90s kid, okay, I read a lot of Ben Reilly, a lot of Scarlet Spider, a lot of the moody, like it's Spider-Man, but really it's like a Spawn comic, like and that it was just so funny. And like you said earlier, Christian, there's like this I don't know exactly because I do know a lot about Spider-Man, and so I can say from that perspective it was great, but I would imagine just with how good the plot points are that even if you don't know like all these little like you don't know who Scarlet Spider is, that scene is still funny because of like the way the character is played and the voice and like what he says and stuff. And I think it's a very delicate balance to be able to do both like that. And for them like to do this again after how good that first film is, and the payoffs too of like the spider, like why the spider had that number on it and why it looked like a little bit different in the first film, and like the bagel thing, like just very like it feels like a comic book. And I mean that in the sense that like everything is there because it has its like everything we come in contact in the story feels natural. It doesn't feel like, okay, well this happens because later in the story this has to happen, right? Like when they go to when they first jump, when he follows Gwen, right, and they end up in the India Spider-Man place, Mumbattan, and like it just you're suddenly in this whole, it's not just like this little set piece. And I think the animation style is really what helps sell that gives each world like its own little bit of personality like immediately as soon as you see it. But yeah, it's just weird to see. We don't get a lot of media that, especially in like visual media, that crosses styles like that, like when you get Who Framed Roger Rabbit, right? Like when that came out, like that was huge because like it's animated but it's also live action, and you're having these characters, Space Jam again, which never had a sequel, and doing that again in the animation level, especially with the way that viewers have been trained now with HD and different frame rates and stuff, like then jumping to like seeing a 30 FPS frame rate character next to like a 60 FPS frame rate character on the same screen in HD is like, I don't know how to describe it. It's just like really, really sells the like different universe more than you can do in any other. Like I love Everything Ever All at Once, and they did a good job in a lot of ways of doing that as well. But still, it's for the most part, not entirely, but for the most part, it's all like live action, so it's all still kind of has that same feel. So yeah, it just really, really captures that comic book energy. And I want to say what Eric said earlier about why it doesn't feel as much like Infinity War in terms of like satisfaction at the end. There is a good self-contained story there that we get with Gwen, right? And that's why the movie starts with her and we have that important scene. The tricky part is what happens after that scene, where there's still more like setup and stuff. And it's like, okay, wait, is there more happening? And then the movie ends and you're like, oh right, this is a part one. But that having a solid conclusion helps a lot in the film feeling complete, as well as like, even though they do take a loss, it's not like a total TKO like with Infinity War. Like it was like, boom, half the people are dead, you guys lose, game over. And we left thinking like, what Deus Ex Machina time travel, and of course that's what they did. Whereas this one, it's like, okay, Spock got stronger, they failed in that end, he's in the wrong place, but like there is some hope in a sense. Like it's like our guys are, it's like you said, reshuffling the deck. They're down but not out. Right. So we're more excited.
Infinity War had that feeling too of, okay, I mean, I don't know how, but obviously everything that just happened is going to be undone most of it. So it's like, all right, well, let's see what the adventure is, and this is just more of your traditional cliffhanger. Let's see what's next. And so but you're right. There is the through line of Gwen's story that basically takes us through this. To Nate's point about having the different styles, obviously, there's great moments where you have live action. You have Donald Glover as the Prowler, which was the character that he played, not as the Prowler in Homecoming, and also there, 70s Spidey, 1967 Spidey shows up, and also having the live action clips from the Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire movies, and
the one from the kids show with the weird shaped face Spider-Man,
the bobblehead,
and the one from the game, from the Insomniac game,
dude,
is in there.
His roommate's playing the Insomniac game. I was like, holy shit, you guys went all out for all of these things.
I kept waiting for Iceman and Firestorm to also appear. Wait, right, that's her name, right?
Firestar. Firestorm is a DC character.
Yeah, you're right.
But the nod to that series, though, is one of the I don't remember what they call it when they contain those sort of the anachronisms, the things that don't belong. One of those is a character, I think, from the first episode of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends from the early 80s. It's a character called Video Man, and it's like a pixelated thing that Electro creates on that series. So I think that was before we saw Donald Glover. So I was like, wow, that's a really inside mind-blowing thing. And then they're like, oh yeah, but we got Childish Gambino over here. I'm like, all right, okay, fine. But
when they did the diss track in there, when they said that with Doctor Strange and that annoying kid or something, I'm like, that
was nice, actually.
Yeah. I mean, a name checking MCU, but insulting them in the process.
Yeah, in the process of it all.
Yeah, and I'm gonna ask Eric the same question something to isolate, but because you brought up the MCU, let's talk about that for a moment, because there's sort of the expectation that we don't get Tom Holland, we don't get MCU there could be a lot of reasons for it, but I would be surprised if we don't see him in the next one, even if it's just as much as we saw, Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. Does anybody feel like we won't see him? Are you like, no, they're clearly telling different stories? Because, they put him in Sony movies. They're Sony movies, like with Marvel. He certainly could have been in this movie. They wouldn't have had trouble working that out, I don't think.
I feel like once you bring him out, that's the cameo. I think that's like the knockout punch of cameos. So the finishing move. So I think that's one you maybe hold off on, because I could see that dude popping up at the end of the next film.
Sort of Carol Danvers style.
Right. And I personally, I would have liked to have seen Nicholas Hammond, who is the 70s live action Spider-Man, the one basically he shot like ropes out of his wrist. And let's not forget Japanese Spider-Man, where basically
I have to say, I knew.
It's like his best friend was like Voltron, essentially. I mean, just so but there's another movie coming. So I would it would be great if we got to see those as well. So, but for you, Eric, what was a sequence, a character, a moment, anything that you as you thought back, or maybe something that your kids latched onto as the group of you and your 10 real friends were walking around, probably went somewhere to had a delicious meal afterwards that I also wasn't invited to, but that's all
right. Cold out.
Come for the spider, stay for the guilt. Welcome to the world of Bladcast. Well, so this is a movie that does big and small really well. And that's something I think that's been, and I'll defend a lot of the recent Marvel releases, because I think there's not one that I didn't like, but I didn't love them in the way I loved previous Marvel ones. But I thought this is one where it really understands, like, if you don't figure out the small, the big doesn't matter. So on the big scale, like the set pieces, the wow moments, like, I'm sorry, Miles escaping all the other Spider-Men and Spider-Women was remarkable. Wow. There was so much going on there, and it was like one of the great set pieces I've ever seen, in terms of it just kept getting bigger and crazier, then got smaller again. It was like the movements of a symphony. It was so good. And that scene, I think on just like what they were able to do, the action, the sort of how they even like, I know they're not putting a camera someplace, but the framing, everything about that sequence, which could have been a freaking mess, was not. It was really clear. There was great tension. I love that set piece. And then on the flip, that single moment of him that is in essence the closest this movie came to the famous upside down kiss from the first Spider-Man, is them upside down just talking. And Miles, Miles is, we're all thinking a kiss is going to happen. It doesn't. I'm glad it didn't. But that moment between them, it took its time. It's a good few minutes long. And it takes the idea of like, oh, this is the cute moment. This is the moment of their romance blooming. And it didn't go anywhere obvious with it. And I love the visual of the upside down city landscape. Just that was a moment I was like, okay, that really shows the talent of the storytellers. I'm sorry, go ahead, Katie.
That transition shot of like just dipping the frame with her,
was
I'm like, wow, I wonder how they shot that. I'm like, dummy, it's animation. It was one of those moments like that
5 camera people died making that shot.
Right, exactly. And they must have those like spider sticky feelers on their butts in order to be able to sit down like that. But yeah, no, that shot was so beautiful, and there's so many frames in this movie alone that just need to be stills and like hanging on my wall, because wow, what they did with that was just it's one of those things where you're like, oh, I get how they did that, they animated it, but at the same time I'm like, but how beautiful they communicated that in such a beautiful film way, like they shot it real. And I don't know what the thought process was into that. I don't know why I was so moved by that, but as soon as she turned over and they just sat together, God, that scene and the scene where Gwen talks to her father, that
oh right, and the colors changed during the scene.
It makes me cry every time.
Yeah,
the watercolors, they just bleed into each other, and then when she flips them and they hug and it just explodes into their colors. Holy shit, I'm already crying.
Yes, Guilt and Tears, a Bladcast adventure.
As I mentioned, I went with my wife, and there were tears. It was all parental moments, because we're parents now, so we don't identify with the characters in these movies. We're always like, oh, their parents must be worried about them. I don't want to be worried about my little Spider-Man, my little ghost spider. And it's interesting. I was thinking about, this is what the 10th movie of starring Spider-Man that we've gotten, and that web swinging sequences can still be inventive and interesting. And I mean, this is because the scene with Miles and Gwen, obviously you have the two of them, so it's a new take on it. But I think that 20 some odd years ago, I was just like, wow, they really nailed that for the first time ever. And just always raising the stakes. I thought that was great. We talked about him briefly, but the Indian Spider-Man, Mumbattan, that whole sequence was amazing. The style, the music, the characters, the slight variation on the Peter and Gwen story. I was like, you want to talk about giving me 6 episodes of a series? I would enjoy having that. Then you can do another one about another one. I mean, I would definitely enjoy a Spider-Punk adventure. But so I thought, for me, that was just like, I don't know that variation of Spider-Man at all. I don't know.
I want to.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I'm what Dan Slott wrote like 1,000 issues of Spider-Man. You're going to tell me that there isn't one that is a story about that guy? So I hope to be able to find that. But that's the thing. It's like, there's so many different things to latch onto. There's so many great characters. There's the knock is that I didn't get my Spider-Ham fix, but we did see him at the end. And I did notice that he didn't talk, so that was like, no checks to John Mulaney for this movie, but we'll have to write a big one for the third one, I suppose.
Well, he might not have been available at the time of all.
He might not have, but also it's an animated movie, so you could have recorded it like the week before. But I know what you're saying. Yes,
his dialogue might have just been a rehab session.
That's true.
They could have. It's like, wait, why is Spider-Ham, saying lines from his last Netflix special? But anyway, so I think that we got so many, and then it's so funny because you can think of the other ones. I want to circle back on Scarlet Spider, the Ben Reilly, because you're with the way Nate was talking about it. My wife absolutely did not know that character. She'd never seen that suit. She didn't know anything about him, and now in her mind, he's a doofus like that. You know what I mean? So it's like they kind of did him wrong. I think they did him dirty a little bit but he is very funny in this movie. But at the same time, it's like, well, I guess that's going to be him forever. I don't have a lot of affinity for anything that came out of any of the Clone sagas. I didn't stop reading when Ben Reilly took over, but it just reinforced that, okay, this is part of the reason I'm not reading Spidey anymore. I liked Peter, and look, the idea that I think that's that sort of resistance to Ben Reilly that people had, whatever that was 25 years ago, is why giving us Miles in this way was perfect. And I'm talking about the first film, obviously, because now we all know him and we like him, and doing him animated before doing him live action. I think that Sony hasn't done a lot of things right with this multi-billion-dollar property that they have in the way of Spider-Man. But I think the way that they've given us Miles has been good. And I think to really get to spend time with Gwen and have her not just be, some really cool cosplay that you've seen people do. It's a great sweatshirt you can buy. My daughter has one, So I thought all that was great. We should really fixate on, oddly, there's two big bads in here, and one of them's supposed to be a good guy. I want to start talking about Spot, the Spot. He first appears in Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man. He has a cameo appearance in number 97, and I started that was my first Spider-Man comic, was number 89 of that. So this is the first year I'm reading comics. I loved that character. I thought he was really cool. Pretty goofy, and they took that kernel of like, this is a real goofball character, but what about when the goofball character's like, I can be so much more. Just imagine if Miles was just late for that meeting and he took him seriously, he wouldn't have needed to do all of this. He wouldn't have needed to unravel the Spider-Verse. And I thought that idea of the really slight minor villain that most people, I mean, I know he was on the animated series. And when I was, I talked about this film with our friends over on Geekscape earlier this week, and Garrett Briones, who was on there, he pointed out that Spot is the only character on the 90s animated Spider-Man series that Spidey actually punches. They wouldn't let him punch people, but Spot he could, I guess, because he had the holes everywhere. But it was just such a great arc following that character, and his arc is not over. There's gonna be more Spot. I don't know, I just thought it was such an interesting choice. I knew Spot was in this movie because we'd seen him in the trailer or whatever. I didn't think we were going to spend this much time with the Spot. What do you think of the Spot, Nate? Let me ask you first.
I the same as you. Well, not exactly same, because I did not start reading.
Yeah, because you're not really old. I know. I get it. You weren't buying comic books.
No,
you weren't buying comic books on the newsstand in 1983. I get it.
Yeah. I think I saw him in a trailer and I knew he was in the movie, but I definitely was not expecting him to escalate in the way that he did. But I think it's cool. It helps. Okay, what makes really good villains is their motivation, and often the best way to get that to be believable and round out a character is to see kind of that evolution that gets them to that way of thinking, right? And so we kind of missed some of it in terms of him just all the in between of him getting hit with the bagel and being turned into Spot until where we see him now. But we see him basically right at his starting point of I lost my job. My family doesn't want anything to do with me. I have to kind of steal money to survive. Although they don't clarify if he has to eat or not. But, you know, he probably wants a place to live and maybe some clothes, right? He can't get a job. So he goes to try. He's like, I'm not stealing from you. I'm stealing from the bank, from the ATM, right? And then as he goes on, he gets confronted with this person that he blames for ruining his life, who and continually like is beating him up and ruining his life more, making it harder for him to just try to survive. And then he's like, well, what if I make myself stronger? And then I makes myself stronger. And then he gets addicted to the power and consumed with this like revenge of this person who ruined his life, and getting to see that grow from like, oh yeah, it's funny, haha, little joke, so like, oh my god, he's getting kind of really strong, to like, oh, he did the thing, they failed to stop him and he did the thing, and now he's like super god powerful stuff. Like, I thought that was really cool. Especially I knew, yeah, I what's his name? The guy from
Jason
who does the
Schwartzman?
voice? Oh my god, he's so
Max
funny.
Fisher.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he
Oh,
Yeah, Jason Schwartzman. Yes.
yeah. Is Max Fisher, is that his name in the HBO show? The
No,
detective show?
Rushmore. That
Oh,
was his
Rushmore,
character in
yeah.
Rushmore.
Oh, no. Anyways,
Right.
he is so funny. But also he, I think, is a totally underrated actor, and very much sold the line was bouncing back and forth between like silly haha crazy to like, oh my god, scary unhinged crazy. And
mm.
to do that with just, obviously he's assisted by the animation, but the vocal performance was like, it's awesome.
It reminded me of like the early 90s superhero, or like, I guess late 90s, because we didn't really get into like the mid to late 90s superhero movies, where we started out with the geeky character that's just misunderstood and then becomes the ultimate villain because nobody was listening to them. And I was like, oh, this feels very Sony. But at the same time, like, so justified, where we get to see the villain's arc within him becoming the villain. And just like, okay, you're just the villain of the week, you know, you're nothing, and like, you can only tell somebody you're a nothing so many times before they explode. And I think that was one of the biggest things in the themes of this movie and several of the movies surrounding it, where it's like, you aren't supposed to be here, no one wants to give you any credence. And that's Spot's whole thing, is that people keep telling him that he's nothing.
Yeah,
You know,
and go ahead, Eric. Yeah.
You know, I was going to say, it's funny. It reminded me of where they failed with Electro in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Because Amazing Spider-Man 2, think of the arc, same thing. You know, nerdy guy, sort of looked down upon, like treated like punk. And at first, you know, not necessarily a supervillain yet, but works his way up towards it. Except somehow they took the fabulous Jamie Foxx and made him terrible in that film.
It was so
And then-
bad.
It was
he
really
was great
bad.
in No Way Home. He was great. I mean,
Yeah.
it was
He
clearly
was great.
different writing, different directing, but where they failed with Electro is where they succeeded here. In essence, like totally buying into his transformation over the course of the film. Nate, I love what you were saying about he did all that just with his voice. I mean, that really shows just what Jason Schwartzman brought to the table, because yeah, he was hysterical at the beginning when he was goofy, but you totally, every step of the way for his change, you're there for dramatically, you buy into it. And even like the visuals of what they did, which started off as kind of comedic, those visuals became a little more menacing as they went on too. Like the use of sort of shadow and space, like all of a sudden it's like, no, this is actually pretty creepy. And
Also,
I think
like,
they've set up a great villain for the next one. I'm sorry, go ahead, Nate.
well, I just want to say on that, the visual thing too, he starts as like this like white with like the little spots, and you
Right.
can see kind of like the sketch marks of like how when you're drawing figures for like the body. And then in the end of the movie, obviously after he gets all the powers and stuff, he's like this black blob that's like not even really solid, kind of like dissipating. Like it is such a stark visual change. That yeah, it's like, I just wanted to accentuate what you said. Like,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
really
absolutely.
adds to it.
Well,
Yeah.
it's interesting
Go ahead.
too, especially when his large spots show up in these catalyst events or canon events, you know, kind of ruining the Spiderverse. How we start to see the different versions of the Spideys coming in very TVA like, trying to clean things up.
yeah.
And I was like, oh, there's a very like time variant association type thing going on with all these Spideys trying to rectify stuff within their own like corporate structure, which brings me to Oscar Isaac's character.
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to make sure we talked about before our conversation starts to dwindle down. I want to talk about Spider-Man 2099, Miguel O'Hara, and Oscar Isaac. Fantastic, characterization for that, and I think it's great. Miles has the point. It's like, wait, you've got claws. Like, are you sure you're a good guy? It's kind of the point. I sort of set this up a few minutes ago. Ivan Soto in the chat says Miguel O'Hara wasn't really a villain. He was more of an antagonist. Yes, he's an adversary. He's not a villain. But like so many of your good villains, he thinks that what he's doing is right, and he thinks that what he's doing is necessary. And I think towards the end of this film, we start to see that, maybe it's not all necessary. That there are times where, some of these universes, some of these realities do start to implode on themselves, but it doesn't mean that they all will, perhaps, and especially because Miles, by the nature of him not supposed to be Spider-Man and the fluke that created it, well, maybe he doesn't actually have to follow that narrative. Maybe his dad doesn't.
The fluke of him becoming Spider-Man is also what created Spot and is now putting everything in jeopardy. So I don't know. I'm not convinced Miguel is wrong. I don't agree with him. I would still try to save the dad. I am very confident in the writing team that they are going to wrap this up very well somehow. I don't know how, but I don't know. Miguel makes a very compelling argument.
Well, think about the point of Spot always being told he's not worth anything. He's not supposed to be part of this. He's not even supposed to exist, type of thing. Same things are being said to Miles. So in that way, I do get why Oscar Isaac's character is wrong, because I'm we keep telling these people that you're not supposed to be here. What you're doing is wrong. Or it's why, when the alternative is someone dying in my stead. So I do find the connection with Spot really interesting. I think we're going to see more of that connection and similarity in their characters in the third one.
That's I think I didn't think about it that way.
Eric,
Marvel
I want to
team up.
I mean,
Spidey in the Spot.
I love me some Marvel team up.
Yeah, I could see them going that way. I don't know.
I don't know how they're going to do it, but
there's a great potential of just the realization that we're actually not that different.
We're all kind of see them
fighting for the same thing, except that you want to kill my dad
or something.
Yeah.
Well, maybe towards the end of the third one, they'll both realize that their mother's names are Martha, and make sure.
Well, that's only if it's going to be a truly great movie.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, your mother's is Martha. No, mine's Faye. I'm sorry. I'm gonna let her die.
Oh, that didn't really work out. What do you think, Eric, about Spider-Man 2099, Miguel O'Hara?
Now I'm getting excited about the double Marthas. I got to admit, I can't quite take that. We're gonna need a moment on that. He was a great character to bring into the mix because, and you're right, it became a lot like Loki. And I still am surprised they haven't utilized I almost called him Yoki.
Yogi.
He's the Italian Loki. He's Yoki.
I'm avoiding the urge to say picnic baskets now, Christian. Thank you for that. But Loki,
hey
Spidey, Loki launched so much of this, and the only name check that they got was that one sort of throwaway moment at the end of Ant-Man. So it's funny. Part of me kept thinking maybe at some point some of the Loki folk would come over into this world. Even though I know it's Sony Animation and they don't give a crap about Disney TV, but still it felt like they're towing the same line. And I think that's what makes 2099 such a great character is we get him. And I think partially because we've had Loki, we don't need much explanation. Weirdly enough, it was almost like a good on ramp. It's like, we can't have this, and if this happens, like, entire universes could implode. So, sorry, not sorry. I've got to let your dad die. Sorry about that. And it makes a lot of sense. So even when like other spider folk begin to sort of turn to help Miles, it does feel like, well, you realize like you guys all might together be screwing up the entire universe. You're going to be doing what Star-Lord did when he kept punching Thanos.
Yeah.
And, we almost got this, Peter. And then he screwed it up for everyone. So that's what's kind of great about 2099 is like, you're not exactly sure who to root for. And having Issa Rae as his henchwoman is great because she's one of the coolest characters in this movie and doesn't feel like a bad guy at all. So I think that's where they've made the decks really smartly aligned. Like, you don't see where the villain is like in the wrong completely. And I think in some ways maybe even one up Thanos because they're not bloodthirsty. They're just trying to make sure they're trying to protect the universes. I think we can all line up with that.
And our pal Daniel Drew in the chat refers to Yogi, the prince of picnic baskets. So, but yeah, I think it's very interesting to think about where this is going. How Miles gets out of that predicament. I thought that it was a really nice job of fooling at least me as a viewer when Gwen is outside what we think is the same room that Miles was in when he went back to, but then we realize she's in a different reality as him. I compared it to that moment in Silence of the Lambs when the FBI is ready to raid the house, and then it turns out just the little Clarice Starling by herself is the one who got to Buffalo Bill's house, and she didn't have any backup, So it's just like, oh no, he's in the wrong place, and just sort of the way that they ended that, I'm like, all right, but electricity, invisible turn-in, spider power Miles is going to be a lot better than you want to be Prowler Miles, but I still want to see that fight,
Yeah.
So
unless Prowler Miles also has some power set that we don't know about.
Yeah,
that's true. That's a good point. I mean, maybe he wasn't bitten by a radioactive spider, but maybe there were cosmic rays or gamma rays. There's a lot of ways to get powers in some of these.
I just love the idea that like we've seen a bunch of different variations of Peter Parker and then a bunch of other Spider men, women, people that are not Peter Parker. But then now also seeing another version of Miles, that's not something we've seen before, let alone like a dark one. Like that's really cool to me.
Did the mom
that dude's a stone cold killer too.
Yeah. Did mom freak out at the hair? That was my one question because
she commented on
No,
the
she
hair.
did. She says something.
Oh, you took your braids
Also,
out.
too,
okay. Thank you.
When he scans in the computer, a little thing pops up on the screen that says Universe 42 or something, or like.
Yeah.
So I was not surprised. I thought everybody saw that. When I was reading online, a lot of people were surprised, and I was like, "Oh, I thought that was."
I was probably staring down into my popcorn bucket, just sad that it was almost gone.
There's also who knows what else is on the screen that you were looking at too, because if you blink, you miss like 4.
I know, and that's why it all goes back to what Katie said earlier. I hope that we're able to have like a Blu-ray of this before the next one comes out. I'm pretty sure they'll figure out a way to get it in our houses so that we can rewatch it. But it's like I want to rewatch the movie. I want to see it again in the theater. But then, it's almost like I need to Zapruder film this and go frame by frame the whole movie. It might take a while, but
my wife was supposed to come with us, and she got a nasty migraine.
Oh, okay, so you even had an extra ticket that someone wasn't using?
Yeah. Oh, no. I found a nice guy who was trying to convert me to a variety of religion, so I just gave it to him.
That's really sweet.
But you imagine trying to
at
watch
least you
this
brought
with a
somebody who was
migraine?
better company than me. So
Did you pick one?
I don't fault you for that. Yeah,
I said, give me the whole buffet.
Are you a Jehovah's Witness now?
Take one of these and one of these.
Sorry. So you were going to say though that you apparently also don't like your wife either, and didn't let her come. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I think that was the subtext I was going with.
Yeah.
I'm glad you saw it. Yeah. So, but the idea, if she saw this with a migraine, her head might have exploded.
Yeah.
I mean, like but when we came back, we're basically like, we're taking you to see this, and she was like, just like groggy, like just let me sleep. but all of us, all three of us, were like almost like jumping on the bed, Lord of the Rings style, to be like, you have to go see this. So at some point, whether she realizes it or not, she'll be joining me on an IMAX screening of this because I have to see it again. I want to see it big too before I Zapruder, as you've put it so nicely, Christian.
Yeah.
Like I want to actually get a sense of what it looks like in an even bigger screen. And see if maybe I can catch more stuff that way too.
Do you mind inviting me to that?
Not at all,
Christian, but like
no, Christian, no, Nate as well, of course, and Nate, Katie, any of your friends as well, or husbands.
Yes, my multiple husbands.
She has a few to choose from. Louis Cox makes this point. They say Earth 1999 is a bunch of nines. That's the MCU, but no one says Earth 616 at all. Earth 616 is the comic book one, and it has been referenced. I don't think it's referenced in this, but every once in a while we do get that.
We did see a flash when Spot was kind of going.
No, that movie comes out Friday.
Nice. We saw we saw a brief moment of like within we saw like the spider with the 42 on it, and then we saw the different like tags of universes, and they had like Spider Noir's universe, they had a couple of the different ones. So I'm sure again, as soon as I get this thing on like Blu-ray or something, I'll be able to be like, yeah, right there. Okay, that's where we reference it. I don't know. There's so much in this movie that like their entire like character could have been 616, you know, and I wouldn't have noticed.
Just wanted to put this in here. Ivan Soto saying Miguel is also not someone to root for, considering he replaced a dead man. Very creepy. Yeah, I was getting real Don Draper vibes off of Miguel when we sort of got that explanation. And it's funny because my wife worked on Mad Men, and I think we didn't actually talk about that. No, thank you, Ivan. You've given me something for us to talk about over lunch. Anyway, there is a lot more.
It's their pillow talk.
It kind of is. There's a lot more Spider-Man talk to come, and we will have another Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse episode of this show, but this ties into our big announcement. That show will be the first that will no longer be found on the Blackcast YouTube channel, but our friends over at Geekscape are going to host this show, and it will be there. Let's see, Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 Eastern. I almost said Pacific both times, and then that's confusing. So we're very excited to be bringing this show, a version of it, which, as most people know, started over on Popcorn Talk, and then it's lived very comfortably on the Blackcast for about 3 years, my own personal YouTube channel. But we're very excited to be bringing it over to Geekscape. Our pal Daniel Drew was there in the chat for the Geekscape special we do. So it's that easy to find it. I'll still tweet out the links, all of that. But for those of you and there's many who have wanted the show to exist as an audio podcast, it finally will, because somebody else will be doing it. So the whole problem was I didn't want to do it, and now somebody else is going to do it. So I was
hooray!
Poor Matt Kelly's going to do it.
Distribution of labor.
Yeah, right, exactly. I was like, oh yeah, that's what I wanted. So we're very excited to be over there, and that'll be the home for that episode. And then the week after, we're going to start talking about Secret Invasion. So we'll have an announcement next week as to when to find that. But that'll be next time. For right now, I want to give everybody a chance to let you, the audience, know where you can be found. Nate, where can people keep in touch with you?
You can find me everywhere at Dog Like Nate with 2 G's. Just look around the corner.
If you just were like, you can find me everywhere, and then you'd stop.
No, you have to put my name in first. But then, if you turn the corner after you type my name in, then I'll be right there.
The Dog Like Nate verse is where you can be found. There are many of you there.
There are many of us.
And Katie, what about you? Where can you be found?
You can always find me at ElSassyPants, ElSassyPants. If you're in the Los Angeles area, I am now on a house team for the Pack Theater, so I will be performing twice a month, every Wednesday at 8 o'clock with Nothing Burger. and more stuff to come. Very excited about the coming summer and different things to do. So yeah.
And Mr. Connor, where can you be found? It's a great, it's a very current reference I just made.
Oh, I mean, listen, like some references age back up, so 50-year-old reference, not a problem.
So Epstein's mother, that's going to work too. Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, what were you going to say?
Well, me and Horshack, you can find me and Horshack hanging out at Count Eric Connor, which is Instagram and Twitter, around the fringes of Facebook with my middle name Adam. Yes, my real middle name. And Christian, I do promise whenever I go see the Transformers movie, I will invite you, which means we'll be watching it in my house at 2 a.m. some night when I've had 1 or 2 drinks too many. So I'll call you up.
I'm seeing it tomorrow at 10 a.m. because I've got that AMCA list. I might as well use it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you like yourself, I thought, Christian.
How long have you known me? Whatever gave you the impression that I liked myself, that I even moderately appreciated any facet of my own personality?
You married well.
Yeah. A few people are commenting on our announcement. Kame Egan likes the Geekscape channel, which is great. Ivan Soto had the question, it's only audio. No. It'll still be a video show like this where you'll find it on Geekscape's YouTube channel. And also now you'll have the option, probably by the next day, you'll be able to just listen to it. And, I think in the last few years, I think you've found more people are kind of okay just sort of playing something on YouTube, whether they're watching it or not. It's going to probably be on your phone anyway. But we want to give people the option. So we're excited to be over there. Thanks to our pal Jonathan London and Matt Kelly over there for housing us over there. And basically it came in when I was on Geekscape on Monday and doing their Spiderverse episode with Jonathan and Garrett. Jonathan asked, hey, why don't we have that show over here? And I made the point because you said no. And he's like, I did? I was like, yeah.
Because you've listened to my show.
Sounds like London.
yeah. No, and he's like, oh, well, I think that was an oversight. I'm like, well.
That was drinking a lot then. Yeah, no.
I was drinking a lot. But we're very excited.
Geekscape is awesome, guys. Check it out.
So, and yes, there's also a show that most episodes, I think actually Eric and I think have done every episode of it. And Nate's been on a few or maybe just the one, but Geekscape Book Club is a show that we do once a month, which I need to talk to you about, Eric. we gotta get our flashpoint figured out. All that can be found over at Geekscape. But so that's all the time we have for now. And the Blackcast YouTube channel continues. It'll keep going strong. We'll still have shows that we do. It just won't have this one. Case in point, in 20 minutes from right now, for those watching live, so at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 Pacific, I will be doing a very special episode of the Blackcast Live with the one and only Cardiff Electric, who is a potato. And if that makes no sense to you, you probably need to tune in. You want to talk about using my AMCA list and possibly hating myself. On Monday, I went to see Bert Kreischer's movie, The Machine, so that I could talk to Cardiff about it. He asked, do I have to see the movie? And I said, no, I'll go see it. But I know he doesn't like Bert Kreischer, so I thought it was a great excuse to get Cardiff on the show finally. So,
Christian, I think they listed you by name in the box office receipts.
Yeah, but it was my A list, so it's like it kind of, when I purchased the tickets, it said $0. So I don't quite know how that divides up. But in any case, so check that out if you're interested. It'll be archived, and the Blackcast will continue, and we'll still have some other shows. Strange New Worlds starting up in just a couple of weeks, Katie.
I'm so excited.
I know. So there's going to be a busy summer, but that is all the time we have for right now. We'll see you next time over on the Geekscape channel is where you'll find us. But we'll still see you next time. And as the great Stan Lee would say, Excelsior!